Deseret News Rewind is presented by Heidemann and Associates, a full-service law firm dedicated to winning for you. Call them now for a free consultation. Welcome in Deseret News Rewind. Dusty Litster and Dane Stewart, as always, presented by Heidemann Associates and brought to you by the Utah Army National Guard.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, Heidemann and Associates, a full-service law firm. If you have any legal needs from a living will and trust, maybe you want to set up a business, maybe you have a dispute with someone in your neighborhood, give them a call. They'll offer you a free consultation from the experts at Heidemann Associates. Call 801-754-4240 or learn more at utah.law.
You know, so much stuff has happened during the pandemic and everything. If you're just, it's giving you time to think about your career and you're trying to figure out how you're going to make that happen. That you need to make sure that the financial gap isn't large or isn't going to harm you, or maybe that's a fear. Go to our friends at the Utah Army National Guard. Over 150 job training opportunities with Utah Army National Guard. Now that you get paid, and up to signing bonuses up to $20,000, depending on the job training that you choose. Go check them out at nationalguard.com. All right, let's get into this, Dane. We talked to Rob Cuff at the beginning of the pandemic. We haven't spoken to him, well, on camera or anything else since. I feel like yesterday's announcement of fall sports coming back was a pretty good time to bring him on.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not going to lie, Dusty, I was kind of surprised when I heard. I didn't think that the news was going to be as positive as it was. Now, that being said, not in the clear, right? And made that clear. The board's going to be meeting. And we asked Rob a lot of things about what came from that announcement and what the plan would be going forward as they continue to evaluate this and as they continue to try to formulate a plan to work through our fall sports. But Rob, hey, as usual, as we've become accustomed to, Dusty, very transparent. You know, really helped us understand what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we go through the interview, if you've got questions, please feel free to hit us up on Twitter at DNewsRewind, at Dane_Stewart, at Dusty Litster. Also, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. If you are a school trying to figure out how you're going to social distance and allow families and people that might not be able to come to the stadiums, please hit us up. We will do our best to help you out. And again, hit us up at DNewsRewind, at Dusty Litster, at Dane_Stewart, and I'll be happy to walk through how we can help you make sure that gets taken care of. We have so many options. People we can get in contact with, or we can handle it ourselves as well. Put that little shameless plug out there. But we want to make sure that if you're going to do fall sports and you want to be able to have people watch what's going on, the internet, it's a world wide web for a reason, and we're here to help you with it. But with nothing else, let's jump into our interview with Rob Cuff, the Executive Director of the Activities Association. We had a great announcement yesterday. Thought we'd bring on Rob Cuff, the Executive Director of the Activities Association. And Rob, first of all, just because activities aren't happening doesn't mean that you've been on vacation for the last 4 months, right?
It's actually been a harder year, believe it or not, than years past, just because of the mental side of it and answering everybody's questions and not having the answers, and just trying to facilitate with meetings and board meetings and meeting with coaches associations and our sports medicine advisory committee, state government leaders. So it really has been busy. There hasn't really been a consistency this summer for our staff. You know, normally we can like block off a week or block off a few days and tell our families we'll make sure we go and we're committed and confirmed to these dates. But this year my wife's been very patient because it seems like there's always something that comes up, and it's just really been hard to be consistent. And I think that's for everybody. I mean, it's just a crazy time right now, and everybody's a little hesitant about doing vacations anyway. So when I've had a day off or two, I've normally just been staying at home and trying to help out with some honeydews and some jobs at home.
But so one of the big things, obviously, yesterday. Oh, sorry, Dean.
Nope.
Been a bit. So when we go through what happened yesterday, announcement yesterday came out that fall sports will happen. Can you walk us through a little bit of the inside of what you were considering? Because I know when we spoke back in March, you said whatever the State Board of Education comes out and says, we'll follow it. That you weren't going to be a naysayer or go the opposite. How much of the conversation was had with the state, and then what went into making this decision?
Everything, bottom line, in one sentence, everything applies to whether or not school's in session. That's really the bottom line. Our board had to do what they did last spring because there was no in-person learning. There wasn't even kids on campus consistently. And our board felt like, who are made up of all educators, that without in-person learning, how can you have in-person practice? And if there's sports and activities going on, but school's not going on, what message is that sending? That it's safe to do sports and activities, but it's not safe to do school. And so all of that is just lockstep and tied together, because we as a staff, we're under the direction of our board of trustees, who are all made up of educators, superintendents, principals, local school board members, a state board representative, a private and charter school representative. So we take our direction from them. And it was the hardest thing that I've had to do in my career. And I've been here at the Activities Association. I'm starting year 20. And we had the H1N1 a few years ago, the swine flu. That didn't last as long. That happened in the fall, and we were fortunate to get through that. I was here when 9/11 hit, which was another tough time. Do we still do sports during that time? Do we not? And we resumed Friday Night Lights in honor of our country and what was going on then. So there have been some really tough times, during this tenure, but this has been really, really hard. It's been hard for students, first and foremost. It's been hard for parents. It's been hard for educators, coaches, in particular, administrators, and we as a staff are included in all of that. It's just really been hard, because things change not by the day, but literally by the hour. And, we felt like if we got through Memorial Day, and then, the summer activities have always been under the direction of the schools and the districts. And this year also the county health department, because of what's going on, that maybe we could see summer activities go on and not have many problems. And for the most part, we haven't had very many problems with high school age kids. We've had some issues, as it's been in the news. We've had our schools do a really, really good job reacting to those and working with their local county health departments. And so that's pretty much what we're extending now when we say reopen high school sports in the fall, is continue to work with your local health department. Some counties are yellow with some streaks of orange. Some counties are green. And so every health department is going to vary a little bit on social distancing procedures, symptom checking, all those types of things. And they have to just work hand in hand as partner to try to keep everybody safe. And if we can keep everybody safe and everybody can do their part, then we can keep the season going, and we can start winter and we can start spring. There may be some stop and go to this year. I'm anticipating it. There may be teams that won't be able to play the first 2 weeks of their season, but then they can join the third week. Or there might be a school that can't play the first 3 weeks, or that plays the first 3 weeks and then can't play for 2 weeks. And so we're going to have to be flexible. Our board says this is going to be unlike any other year, and that's so true. And we've just got to be flexible with the RPI. Thank goodness we now have a way to seed where it doesn't matter if you play everybody in the region. We can still seed for a state tournament. We'd like everybody to be able to play all their full schedule, and that would be awesome. But if that doesn't happen, then we could still have a state tournament. But our boards are going to continue to monitor this and evaluate it. They want to meet every 2 to 3 weeks just to kind of see what the current picture is and where we're at with each of our sports. And if we have to modify the season on the fly to get a state tournament in and shorten the seasons, then we may have to do that, in anticipation that, we need to be done by October 15th or whatever, because, medical says that the flu season combined with this is going to be worse than what it currently is. All those things have to kind of be talked about along the way. And so we're going to be flexible. We want to provide an opportunity for parents to make a choice whether or not they and their students are going to be a part of this. I think it's a great opportunity for parents and students to choose whether or not they want to opt into high school activities in the fall. It's a choice. But they have that choice, just like whether or not they're going to go to school face-to-face. They have that choice. But if it gets too dangerous and school shuts down, then I'm assuming that if there's no in-person or blended learning, that our board is going to say there's no in-person practice, and we will have to stop again. And then maybe we get started, and how soon that will be will remain to be seen.
Boy, Rob, so many things that you touched on in that answer, and really appreciate that. maybe the place that I want to start, and you mentioned summer has always kind of been outside the prerogative of the UHSAA. I know there's moratoriums and regulations around high school team practices, but this summer we saw the last chance tournament for baseball. We saw soccer tournaments occurring. I know that members of your staff of the UHSAA have seen or have been exposed a little bit to how those tournaments operated. I'd be curious if that has helped you at all in some of your preparation for the upcoming year and how you might go about operating sports for the upcoming year. What have you learned from that? And what can maybe players, parents, coaches expect?
No, that's a really good point. One of our assistant directors, Jeff Clough, who's over our officials, is actually an official himself, and his college baseball season got canceled because there was no college baseball in the spring. And so he's been doing some extra umpiring this summer in the evenings and on his days off. And he probably has the greatest feel for it and communicates with the umpires daily that have had experiences out there with the summer precautions and things that have taken place. And then we all hear from coaches and administrators. But for the most part, our schools and our educators, our education family is doing all they can to keep student athletes safe. And I think that needs to be the most important thing. And county health department, that they will work with them and provide them the guidance and the direction. We will give a unified guidance and direction, but again, one size does not fit all. And so we will provide that information and those steps and things to the schools. But unless you're right there in the trenches, you really don't know kind of how your area is being affected. So the thing that we're trying to say is we're joining with everybody else and say, do your part. Encourage everybody to continue to be safe and to social distance and to wear masks. And I really believe that the season will last longer if everybody will do their part.
Rob, you said a couple of things. I think one of the stuff we talked about, because we were at the Last Chance tournament and had a lot of conversations, and part of, I always like to be caught as a defender of the Activity Association, but I also want to, like, when you have to take care of a whole state, not just the metro area, which we kind of get caught in that little pocket, and sometimes the rural areas of the state get caught in their own. Like, hey, don't tell us what to do. Don't bring your, big city-minded ideas down to our neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. So I totally appreciate that if we make one decision, it has to be made that decision for the state. But when you look at going forward, as far as protocols, say someone gets it, we know in the NBA, if someone is tested positive, the team's going to be tested, and then those people will be put into quarantine. Is that going to be some, as you just mentioned, they're going to work with local county health departments, things like that. Is that going to be part of the school district? Is that an activity association thing, or just strictly with their county health departments?
Well, I think the situations that we've seen over the summer, even with practice and also with competition, it's been the county health department that has really taken the lead on it in conjunction with the local school and the school district. I think that certainly during the regular season, we will be more of a facilitator and be reported to as to what's happening out there. I think when you kind of look at it, the UHSAA has always been, even though we sanction a particular sport, the UHSAA office staff has been more involved in the postseason than we have the regular and the preseason. We have the preseason that is really our principals, the two principals that agree to play each other, and their coaches, regulate and make sure that things are safe at their home sites and as they travel. And then when you get into a region type schedule, then we have what's called a region board of managers, which is made up of every principal or athletic director in the region, and they work together. They have a region handbook, they have region guidelines and protocol and rules that can be more restrictive than what the state rules are, or they can be in line with the state rules as far as literally. But when it comes to postseason, that's where we're really going to have to work with the county health department, where our venue is for postseason. And that's where we will have to be more involved as a staff, is that we will have to make sure that the venues that we select, or that the board approves, are venues that are safe, that will allow competition, that will allow fans, and that we can maybe get through a postseason. If we can't assure that safety and we can't assure having fans, then we'll have to adjust by maybe doing online or DDM. So I know some of those tournaments earlier in the summer with baseball did something similar to that, where every game was online. But if it just becomes not safe at all, then we'll have to not have a tournament. But we are going to be working hard with those venues so that we can get the right venues to try to prolong the season to the very end.
You know, Rob, I think that we're starting to see some shifts in operations, both at the collegiate and professional level, as they try to figure out how to work through this pandemic. I'd be curious, you know, we see college conferences that have announced for the fall, at least, to pull back on non-conference schedules, only play in conference. We see, you know, limitations of fans. Has the UHSAA started to think of any of those types of options and how they may affect our fall sports here in the state in terms of non-region schedules or fan limitations, those sort of things?
Yeah, and all of that is in the Utah Leads Together plan that the governor and the task force have put together. And so basically they use a color code. And again, we have 11 counties that are in green that they're on a certain color code. And then we have the rest of the counties are in yellow. And for example, in the yellow code, you can have up to 6,000 fans, but they have to be outside in an outdoor venue, but they have to social distance. So what does social distancing mean according to your county health department? And it might mean something different from county to county because of the number of cases or what's taking place. But that social distancing needs to be a part of the plan for the individual school in allowing fans. If you're in the orange phase, then you really can't have fans. And we have right now some schools in Salt Lake City that are in the orange phase. And so that has to be taken into account too during the preseason and regular season, is how are they going to field teams, and will their district allow it and their county health department allow it so that they can be involved in the season. And so right now the Salt Lake district is working with their county health department as we speak to try to iron out those types of things, to try to get their teams eligible for sports in the fall and have them allowed to do it. So it's just going to kind of vary, but those standards are already set through the Utah Leads Together. So what we did with our sports medicine committee is we took the Utah Leads Together standards, we took the NFHS guidelines that were sent out to all of the state associations, and the sports medicine committee with us as staff sat down and we put together our own list of orange, yellow, and green general guidelines and sent those out to the schools yesterday. So they all have those. And that will give them, again, a way to reopen athletics and reopen activities, just like they're now putting together their plans to reopen schools. And so, you know, they need to make sure that they're taking the lead in a similar way that they're taking the lead in opening their schools.
You know, Rob, I guess the next question is, you're going to meet more often. When do you what kind of timelines you're trying to put for in the next sports, right? Because, you know, you got swimming that goes, I mean, it's considered a winter sport, but it's a fall sport because of when it's actually taking place, you know, because it's such a long season. When do those decisions get made as far as those go?
Well, our next meeting with our board of trustees is in a couple of weeks, and with our executive committee, the 1st of August. I'm the meeting with or as needed if we need them earlier. But the executive committee will kind of look season by season, and because winter's championships include swimming, then that hasn't been looked at yet. Just the 7 fall sports have been looked at right now. But in that August meeting, we'll start looking forward to the winter and the spring and trying to kind of gauge if they're going to be starting on time. But it's going to be hard to kind of determine that without having frequent meetings. And that's the purpose for meeting in a couple of weeks, is just to evaluate where we're at, monitor the situation, and adjust if needed.
You know, Rob, it's one of the things, and I, you know, have seen various people from the UHSAA over the course of the summer and just commended at the job that you guys have done, trying to kind of walk this path, because the reality is no matter what you do, some people are going to appreciate it and some people are going to think it's the wrong way to go. I think everyone would love to have an opportunity for these, you know, young men, young women to get out there and to be able to engage in their extracurricular activities. You mentioned staying safe, socially distancing. What is the most important thing from your perspective or that you're hearing? What would be that message that you would send to parents, athletes, kids about what we can do to to try to put ourselves, our communities in a spot to be able to have extracurriculars in the coming year.
It's amazing. The last few weeks, I've got so many emails, both from parents and from educators, and even several from students that just basically with the same message that says, we will do anything that we can to allow sports to happen. And so I think the most important thing is listen to your local coaches and administrations and school leaders. I know there's some out there that just refuse to wear the mask, but it may be helpful, so do it. I mean, if it might be helpful, I would do it. And social distancing and all those things, if fall sports means that much, and I know it does, passion is so high when it comes to high school sports, and especially with these students because they only get 4 chances. And if they're a senior, this is their last chance. And so take whatever precautions you can as a family, as individuals, and just try to be a team player and try to do your part. And I think that as I listened to Governor Herbert yesterday talk about the August 1st goal of under 500 cases a day, I think he's serious about that. I think that we'll see changes if that doesn't happen, and maybe not for the good. I mean, there's a chance that schools could close again and not have in-person or blended learning, and that will affect not having activities. That was shown in the spring. We have to be consistent with what we did in the spring. And if we weren't in school and didn't have activities in the spring, then if we're not in school in the fall, then we're going to have to stop for a while. So everybody understands. I mean, we've been through this for now 3.5, 4 months. Do whatever you can. I know it's hard, but my message would be it's worth it to have what you're passionate about and give up what you're doing now for what you want most.
You know,
that's great.
Sorry, I was just going to ask one more question real quickly, Rob. You talked about this maybe being handled a little bit locale by locale. Has the UHSAA looked into transfer policy? Will there be any update in that if a student is living in an area where they aren't going to be able to participate, but an area not far away is participating? Is that going to be kind of a new allowance for a transfer, or has the UHSAA come out with any clarification on that?
Yeah, we actually talked about that in the executive committee meeting on Wednesday and also yesterday with the Board of Trustees. As per Board of Trustees' decision, the COVID-19 pandemic does not apply to a discontinued program or a school closure. And so we have statements in our handbook regarding that if a discontinued program happened, then a student can transfer without loss of eligibility. That doesn't include the COVID-19, because our board feels like that you may not always be in the situation that you are at the time, and you may actually go to another place that may become worse than the situation that you're currently in. And with all that chaos and flux with academics and everything else like that, then our board did make that statement that they would not allow a discontinued program or a program that isn't going to participate to just allow students to just go wherever they want to a school. The other part of that too that our board is very concerned about is displacing students at current schools as well. And so the transfer rule has not been waived. There's still 5 components that you have to meet to become varsity eligible. If you do transfer and become a full-time student at another school and you don't meet one of those 5 components, then you are eligible at the sub-varsity levels. So we may see some transfers of students who want to transfer and just play at the sub-varsity level. That's permissible under our rule, but for varsity eligibility, you must still meet the 5 components, or one of the 5 components.
Terrific. Well, Rob, you have a thankless job, but we thank you. And it's never easy to be ahead of anything during a time that no one's ever understood or been part of, and it just changes so much. And you made very tough decisions, but I think the right decisions for all that everyone can deal with. I mean, by what you feel is. So we consider you a friend, but maybe a little blinded. But anyway, I think you've done a great job, Rob.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. And we as a staff, we feel the support of our educators and our principals. And sometimes people forget, or they just don't know that we are a member school association, and our members joined voluntarily, even though many of them did a long time ago. So that it's not fresh on everybody's mind, but they do make up the policies and procedures of our association, and every rule that we have and every guideline that we have has been agreed upon by our member schools. And sometimes it doesn't become an issue to them until it affects them directly. And that's sometimes hard about rules and guidelines is that we should have them, but when it affects us, then maybe we shouldn't have it. And so I have a great staff, and that's what we are, is we're a staff to help our member schools, and our boards do a phenomenal job of helping us and facilitating and setting policy. And this is going to be a year unlike any other. This school year is not going to look like last school year, and I hope it doesn't look like the next school year, but we will manage to do as much as we can, and we want to do what we can, and we want to do it safely.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, thank you so much. Go enjoy some well-needed R&R, and if anything big comes up, I might just email you or text you.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I sure appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be updating each other throughout the school year. You know,
Dan, it's always interesting. You said before we went into it, Rob's always very transparent. I mean, I think most people have an idea when you see this that Rob's like a commissioner, that he's like a Roger Goodell or Rob Manfred or whomever, Adam Silver or whatever. He's kind of at bay of what executive director does or executive committee decides, which those commissioners are too, by the way, if you didn't know that. But he's very open with what's going to happen. And I maybe get called a homer or whatever else. I always appreciate his candor. And a lot of his, he knows his limits. He knows reason to go. But I thought what he said was very sincere, but also the plead that if you want fall sports to happen, and I fall into this, I don't love the mask. I'll be open and honest with that. But if it's going to help others around me and allow me to do the things I want to do, go to work, go to games and have fall sports and have all the things I want to have, I've started wearing it. It's on. If I go in somewhere, I'm going to wear my mask because I want to make sure this happens.
Yeah, it really is a community effort. And one of the things that I've actually really appreciated is, it feels like that has been reinforced in our state. And you look at what has happened in some other states and the way they've managed it, and you maybe haven't seen that quite, in every case. But I really feel like in our state, it has been left up to local, health departments, to local administrators, local government officials. And, I think that was the message that I was kind of surprised to hear from Rob, was sports are going to follow along those same lines, right? So for your school district, follow your local health district and understand what they're saying, what their message is, align with them, work together on how we can try to navigate through this. And, even him talking about, look, it might be stop and go. We might have to move things, start things late, start things early. We might be doing a lot of shifting, right? I mean, we're sports people, we're calling audibles here. But the reality is the opportunity to have that impact locally. I really appreciated that perspective and kind of planning as we go through how we're starting to think about our fall and our winter sports. Because, I think Utah, one of the things that makes this state so unique is the fact that we do have these great rural communities and we have large urban population centers as well. And, how can you tell, the great men of Milford that, they can't do this because of what's happening in Salt Lake or Provo or other areas. And so, really appreciate that forethought that went into it. But that being said, Dusty, it might be a week by week thing, and this probably will not be the end, and there will be much more to come. And, if by us wearing masks, us socially distancing now can help us to prepare for that future, count me in.
Absolutely. I mean, somebody could say, well, Dusty, you said certain things to be in private in March. I get it. I said it to you privately in June, but here we are in July, and I want things to happen. And I, no matter what you think and where you land on this, and I kind of say this to be very blunt about it, but and candid, is no matter what you believe is going on, wearing a mask isn't going to harm you, and it's not going to prevent anything or change anything that's going on in your daily life. So making sure that you wear it even in an area that it doesn't matter, it's green, fine, I get you. I won't be all of that. But if you're something else and you're one of these people that wants something to happen, you want these sports to happen, I'm on your side. I understand where you are, but I want this to happen. I'm going to make sure that I'm part of making sure that this happens. And that if that means wearing a mask, it means doing all the things we had to do for a while, by all means, I'm going to do it, because I want to make sure that we are here with Deseret News Rewind, doing Deseret News Rewind live in a way that's never been done, and that we're streaming as many games as possible because games are happening. And that's one of the biggest things that I can think of is if we want this stuff to happen, we have to make some sacrifices. That's what sports teach us.
Yeah. Well, and they teach us about unity, right? And I think you can look at in our communities and we need unity, right? I feel like we need to be able to pick each other up and support each other right now with so many things going on within our state, within our local cities, our neighborhoods, with our friends, our families. And what a great way for us to come back together and to reunify around something, right? The question I asked at the very end around transfers, that was very pointed. And I didn't quite know how Rob was going to answer that. As usual, Rob was very, very upfront about it, and really appreciated that. And I think understanding that perspective of, look, we know this is going to be a fluid thing and it's going to be changing week to week based in different areas. So we don't want people transferring thinking there's going to be an opportunity there. And 2 weeks later, that opportunity's gone, right? And so there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of thought. Folks, we're going to have to work through this, right? We're not going to be able to transfer our way out of it, right? We're not going to be able to find some loophole to get through it. We're going to have to buckle down and all come together and work together on a solution. And I think hopefully this will teach our kids, ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, how we can come together, unify, work together towards a common good, and let's all buckle down. We all want football. We all want soccer, basketball, volleyball, all these great sports to come back. Let's do the work now so we can enjoy the benefit in the weeks and months to come. Absolutely. So again, the message is it's back for now. We're planning on it. But here's the thing: if you are a winter sports fan and you're a parent or anything else or an athlete, you want that to happen. Help your fall sports teams go off without a hitch. And if you're a fall sports team, do everything you can do to make sure that the winter can happen. Because the only thing that can happen is if we go haphazard and say, hey, we're going to do it and we got ours, it's not going to help. We want this all to go, and we're here to cover every second of it. And we'll bring it in the most positive light possible, but also kind of feel important to be a little candid with all of this. If we want it to happen, we all have to do our part. And may not like it, doesn't feel right, or feel good, but it is right. And we need to unify. We need sports to bring us together. It's what it does. And if we want that to happen, we have to sacrifice a little bit too. But any final thoughts, Dane, before we sign off, before we get ready for some classics and everything else? I'm excited for the coming year, Dusty. I know it might look a little bit different, but you know what? Our coverage has changed every year, so why not do it again? We're going to have some fun stuff coming for you. I can't wait to get back out there to be able to see some of these young men, young women out there on the field playing again. Love that we're able to bring that to you. As Dusty mentioned at the top of the show, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us at D News Rewind, at Dusty Lister, at Dane_Stewart. And, it's going to be a year to remember, and just can't wait to get going and to be able to bring it to you. And we'll do our best to cover it, especially as things change week to week and hour by hour, as Rob mentioned. But man, I'm ready to go, and I can't wait for us to do our preseason top rankings, Dusty. I've already started my homework, so get ready. Well, folks, stay safe, stay masked, stay together, and we're going to see you in August. For Vince Francis and Dane Stewart, I'm Dusty Lister. Thanks for joining us, and want to thank Rob Cuff, the Executive Director of the Utah High School Activity Association. As always, Deseret News Rewind presented by Heidemann Associates and brought to you by the Utah Army National Guard.